Welcome to the Healing H.A.C.K podcast. I'm Wilma May, your host. H.A.C.K stands for Healing, Abundance, Connection, and Knowledge, the core elements of real spiritual health. Join us as we explore ancient and modern tools, practices, and approaches for navigating a world that can feel fractured and demanding. You'll hear from experts across spiritual and healing modalities, as well as guests with powerful personal journeys. The goal is simple: to help you build a spiritual toolkit that actually supports your life. Let's begin. Welcome, Róisín. I'm so excited you're here.
I'm so happy to be here.
Oh my God, I love spending time with you. I'm so excited for our conversation today. I thought I would just talk a little bit about how we met and how you came into my life. So I guess this was during the pandemic between around 2020, right? So I had started my nonprofit, DRK Beauty Healing, where we gave away free therapy to women of color during the pandemic. And we were put in touch by a mutual friend, but also you were his client. And you were head of marketing at SoulCycle. And we started talking about my team of clinicians working with the staff at SoulCycle in the run-up to the 2020 election and how we could help everybody stay grounded during that time. And so that was our first time meeting online and working together.
Which was really special. It was a very, very tough time. It was a really tough time for everyone because of the pandemic, because of the Black Lives Matter movement and all the emotions that were going on around that. And so it was heaven sent, you coming into SoulCycle to help us just kind of reground, get people into a space where we could build from, because everything was kind of in disarray and in chaos. And then you came into my life and the rest is history, which is beautiful.
I mean, that kind of, I think that was really the surprising thing for me, was that after all of this had ended, we kept in touch. We were having lunch and you were asking me what I was working on. And things had moved on from and this must have been like the following year, I think, maybe a couple of years actually. And I was sharing with you that I was moving from working in the mental health space into the spiritual health space. And that I had this calling to share some of the things that I'd grown up with in my life, and that I'd learned from my mother for the first time ever, my mother being this amazing spiritual teacher, and that I wanted to share the spiritual bath that I'd grown up with and how helpful it was to me. And so I was starting on this journey for Sordoe, and you really loved it. And I was really like, wow, okay, doesn't sound so crazy after all. And so, and then to my surprise, you offered to invest in the business, and I was blown away. And you also said, I really want to be involved. I want to support you every step of the way. And for me, that was a godsend, because as many founders know, it's a lonely job to start a company on your own. And having a co-founder wasn't really an option for me. So you got involved. You got involved with the business, with all the different things. And I had no idea that I needed you. That was the funny thing about all this. I'm used to doing things on my own. And the way that you supported me by reaffirming my belief in myself and my own intuition, as opposed to going, no, don't do that, Wilma. And that was magical, right? Really, really magical, because I had this support, but I had your knowledge, had your marketing wisdom, but also your spiritual wisdom, because it turns out you're a spiritual person as well.
And I became a lot more spiritual. I think that was really the beginning of the journey.
Wow. So talk me through, where you were and how did you get to this place now?
Yeah, so I was a C-suite executive, 20 years of experience in some amazing companies. And one of my old bosses used to joke that my resume read a bit like a dating profile, because I got to work with some great companies, from AB InBev, Diageo, and then Equinox, SoulCycle, where we met. And then I went on to work in aviation for Blade, and most recently in longevity for a company founded by no other than Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis. So a lot of marketing experience, and I was very good at it, and it looked like success. And so then almost to the date, like 4 years ago, the universe kind of called BS on all of that. I was coming out of a SoulCycle ride. So I was working at SoulCycle, came out of my first turkey burn and hopped on a Citibike to go home to my 2 young kids. Only I never made it home. I was cycling down Fifth Avenue when next thing I knew, a bus swerved into my lane. And then I was lying on the ground with people screaming all around me. I looked down at a leg that didn't look or feel like mine. I couldn't feel it. There were bones sticking out the side of it. And all I knew is I wasn't making it home. I wasn't getting up. And it was crazy how quickly something like that could happen. And so that, while it was a moment that felt surreal and terrifying, it absolutely changed the course of my life. I went from, the first reaction is one more of pity, like, why did this happen to me? Why me? But the power happened when I went from that question to, what is it that I'm not listening to? And so that sent me on this beautiful journey of self-discovery. And, these things happen in a way that you're not aware of initially. And I think us meeting was part of that. So we had met before the accident, because my accident was in 2021. So the first contact that we had was, I think we were united by a shared sense of purpose and impact. And so what you were doing really resonated with me. You resonated with me as a person. That meeting where you were telling me about Sordoe and that resonated was probably about a year after the accident.
Right. Okay.
And so all those things were starting to, I was starting to listen to my body, starting to listen to the signs. And it's incredible how everything starts to shift, and people and opportunities just show up when you need them. That was one of the biggest learnings that I had through all of this, is I spent 20 years hustling and pushing and performing and trying to prove that I could do it all, mostly better than the boys. Mm-hmm. and then when I had this moment of, okay, what am I not listening to, and started to tune back in, everything started to flow so much easier, so much more effortlessly. And so when you came with this idea, I didn't know what it was. I was just very excited about it because it felt right. Just stories amazing. Your mother's story is amazing. Your belief in it was something that just felt so right, and just something that I wanted to be part of. And, it all kind of started happening from there. And then just from my own journey, I still took a couple of chief marketing officer roles, as I mentioned, both at Blade and Fountain Life. But things felt different, and I was moving through the world differently. I was letting myself be guided in a way that I wasn't able to do before. And while initially I couldn't articulate what was happening, I didn't have a clear 3-year plan, but I could feel how I was supposed to make decisions. Things just made more sense. My body was telling me what was right, what wasn't. I was following the goosebumps, following the excitement. And I remember vividly being at conferences in the longevity space, and specifically being around people like Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis, and watching them stand in their power and operate from this sense of purpose and building this empire around themselves. And I was drawn to it in a way that I just didn't quite understand, but I knew was changing my life. And I think part of that is what I saw in you too. I never thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always thought that I was happy be in a support function, which marketing is, and just didn't really think I had what it took until I felt the pull of what it means to stand in your purpose and to do something that feels bigger than you. And that's when I went home, decided to write a book. And as I was writing, I was like, this isn't a book. I need my duty and mission in this world is actually to teach people how to do what the universe taught me the hard way. And so I'm really about helping people step into their purpose and their mission in life and be able to tune in so that they can hear it and they can feel it, and then they can make decisions and they can go on and have the impact they're meant to have, releasing all of those fears. And for a lot of people, that comes with these moments of being completely lost. But my theory and what I'm working towards is like, how can I help people get all the way there without needing the really dramatic wake-up call that I had?
Yes. I mean, so that's really interesting, because that accident literally shattered your life, your leg. And you had to do, what, years of rehabilitation?
Yeah, I had a full year going to physical therapy every day because my shoulder was out too, so shoulder and leg. And then I did a year of intense personal training to get the strength back. So it probably took me about 2 years to be back. My surgeon had told me I would never be back to 100%, to which I like to say, hold my beer.
I love that. So then, before the accident, your life looked incredibly successful from the outside. So what signals were your body and intuition sending you that you weren't listening to?
So I feel very strongly that our bodies are sending us these signals all the time. Yeah. All of us have them. And what I mean by that is your purpose is showing up in your life through goosebumps, through the excitement, through those moments where you're fully in the zone. And most of us don't listen to it because we're so busy performing and proving. And so I wasn't listening to any of it.
But they were there.
They were there. They were always there. And I almost took pride in, I absolutely took pride in resilience, and I wore it like a badge of honor. And what that meant was overriding the body again and again. Like, no time to be sick. I can push through this. I can work harder. I will get there. And so the more you override that, the less you hear the signs. But they're always there. One example was before I got married, I had this terrible sciatica. I literally couldn't walk for the longest time. I tried everything, ended up having surgery. And at the time, I thought nothing of it. But, most recently, when I went to Peter Diamandis' conference, for 3 days, I was surrounded by people who were so inspiring, doing their thing. But for 3 days, I couldn't stand. It was a very similar back pain that I was having. And I couldn't understand what was happening. That literally nothing happened to cause it. And then I was at the airport on my way home, and I had this moment, this kind of hit, where I realized that the reason the pain had hit me was because I wasn't in the right room. I knew what I was supposed to do, and I wasn't doing it. And 6 weeks later, I was out doing my own thing. But the moment that thought hit me, the pain went away and it was gone for good. And that's what I mean by we ignore all these signs, all the sickness, the pains, the excitement, all of it is trying to guide us towards what we're supposed to be doing. And until we, one, are just aware that that's happening, and then two, learn how to do it, we ignore it and we keep pushing. And the last attempt that the universe is going to use are some of these dramatic moments. But I don't think we need it, because I do believe everyone is getting them all the time. We just have never been taught how to listen.
That right there, learning how to listen. So tell me about the work you're doing with people now, because I want to then understand, how do you weave that, teaching people how to listen to those signs as well, into the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so it's beautiful. I feel so grateful to get to do what I do. And so the way I work with people is through what I call the freedom flywheel. And so I work with mostly corporate executives or people who are stuck in the machine and calling that success, but know that they're meant for more. And so that the feeling and the pull needs to be strong enough. Those are the people that I like to work with, where I can see the potential and they can feel it. They just have no idea how to get there. And so we start with my Freedom Flywheel is like 4 Fs. And it starts with helping them focus on what actually is important. So like we were talking about, noticing the moments where you're in flow and you're feeling the most alive, the most energetic, and understanding that that is when you're the most aligned. So doing more of that, less of the things that drain you. And then what automatically happens is the fears kick in, right? The ego is going to jump in, and there are all these reasons why it's uncomfortable and you don't want to keep doing those things. And it's really the edge of your comfort zone that typically just brings us back, and we don't even think about it. It happens so quickly. So building that awareness of, okay, this is it. This is the sign that I need to sit with the discomfort and push through. And that's where it becomes more and more powerful, and that fear becomes smaller and smaller. The next step is what I call faith, because once you start to do that, you start building faith in yourself, in the destination, in a higher power, in whatever you want to call it. And I'm yet to meet someone who is highly successful that doesn't have a deep feeling of faith. And because what it does is it helps you let yourself be guided and let go of some of that control, right? And so one thing I say a lot is, if the path ahead is clear, is because it's not yours. And to be able to walk the path that is uniquely yours, you have to be comfortable with a level of uncertainty and just walk, because no one else knows your purpose. No one else understands it. No one else can give you the map. And so you have to have faith that it's going to unfold for you. And then that gets you to flow, which is really where you start to operate in a space where opportunities are showing up and you can recognize them and you walk through those doors. And the impact that you can have on the world once you start to operate in that space is limitless. And that's what's so beautiful. And as I work with people, what I love is, as soon as we start unlocking these things, literally the first 2 weeks, I always get that phone call saying, oh my God, Róisín, you'll never believe what just happened. And it feels like magic, but it's not. We just didn't know how to operate it. It totally is. It is magic. It is magic.
Because you unlock it. Right. Yeah. And you help people unlock that potential. Yeah. And potential is magic, right? It's the beginning of creating and intentioning. And that is almost alchemical, mm-hmm. right? It's a way of kind of, working with the energies that are within you and around you. And you learn how to transmute all of that into something that ends up being quite magical. So that's powerful.
It is. It's so powerful. And the reality is we all have access to it, right? Because that's the thing when you think about magic, and you clearly grew up around a lot of that, you think about it as something that is reserved for a certain type of person who needs a certain level of training, or that it's reserved for people in fairy tales. Right. But it's not. It's not as hard as we think. And it baffles me that no one teaches this, that so many people go through life completely unaware that they have the ability to, I don't want to say be in control, because it's the opposite of it, to master the flow of their lives.
Master the flow of their lives, exactly. Because and I actually learned this from Tony Robbins when I went to do several of his courses years ago, which is, life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. And that was a mindset change for me, when I was like, wait a minute, if it's happening for me, then I can change my mindset about what is bad and what is good. It might look bad on the outside. And I'm not saying everything's some things happen, they're not great. But when I have the ability to shift how I think about it, when we talked about the fire that I had recently, and, we were talking about it, like shifting mindset around that this was, could have been so much worse, but actually it wasn't. And then looking at all the beautiful things that happened in the weeks following. So it wasn't just sitting there being, this is awful and awful. It was like, no, okay, let's get some of this out, but then let's also start like reframing some of this, because there's some really amazing things that have happened and some beauty and magic has happened as a result.
I feel very strongly that nothing that happens to us is fundamentally bad. And that one-liner from Tony Robbins is very powerful and probably the reason why my accident turned into such a positive. But more and more, I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe that anything that happens to us is fundamentally bad. I just think that sometimes it needs to be tougher because we're not listening or because we wouldn't do it any other way. And I talk a lot about how comfortable and comfort is more dangerous than being in burnout or hitting rock bottom, having bad things happen to you, because that negativity that gets generated pushes you to move. And I was in a space where I was really good at marketing, but it wasn't what I was supposed to do. And so I could have stayed in that space for a really long time without the need to become curious, to look for anything else. And that's why I needed something bad to happen. Yeah. But it wasn't bad. And so now I look at things that happen to me always as opportunities. And the big thing that I work with clients a lot on is discomfort is such a blessing. And when discomfort comes up, you've got to train yourself to sit with it, because we run away from it so quickly, but it has the key to that unlock. And listen, sometimes it really sucks, right? You're sitting with it and you're like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm hating this. But I do it right now because I teach my clients, and what always happens is then life serves you opportunities to do it yourself and to prove it. And I'm doing it repeatedly, these feelings that feel so uncomfortable, and they come from triggers and narratives that we've built over our entire life. And so the bigger the fear and the bigger the discomfort, the bigger the breakthrough on the other side. But you have to be willing to sit with it and understand, okay, what is it? How does it feel? How has this shown up at different points in my life, and where did it start? Because where it started was this fear or this feeling as a child that you didn't want, and you wanted to protect yourself against. And today it's this huge beast that you've created over the decades of reinforcing this narrative. And so the work is sitting with that and saying, okay, this doesn't feel good. Why? And pushing through and doing the thing. And sometimes what's most uncomfortable about it is you feel like a 5-year-old again, right? You're not able to find your words. You're not able to talk about it, which is why 99.9% of the population would not push through that unless they're forced. I wouldn't be doing it if I hadn't been run over by a car, if I hadn't gone to some of these like self-discovery ceremonies, and if I wasn't teaching it every day. But now, because I'm so aware of it, I'm like, no, hold on. Come on, body. Let's sit with it. Let's push through. And it suddenly turns those negative and difficult situations into a really exciting experiment.
I learned about sitting in the uncomfortableness of things from Pema Chodron, the Buddhist nun, when about 15 years ago, when I went through severe depression, and I started reading. I was recommended to read her book, but I listened to her audiobook, and she talks a lot about sitting in the uncomfortableness of things. And I'm, as an Aries, not the most patient person.
He's just self-aware.
Yes, now. But that was a real practice for me, was learning how to sit in that uncomfortableness. But when you do is when you actually start to uncover the richness of experiences, and you start to then instead of mouthing off immediately at things because I was very reactionary, when you're sitting in it and you're watching what's happening, you start seeing things differently and what's really going on. Because I had trained myself to, well, my reactionary was the way that I used to protect myself, being reactionary. Because it's like, oh no, this is that. No, I'm going to react. And then that keeps that away from me. But actually, by sitting in the uncomfortableness of situations without reacting immediately, it was almost as if I saw for the first time that it wasn't happening to me. It was around me. And I have like a bird's eye view of what's really going down. And through that, it started allowing me to have more compassion for the players that were all there. And that was so powerful. And so that allowed me to glean more knowledge, wisdom, self-awareness of how I was reacting, understanding that I'm growing. And again, going back to this level of compassion for some of the other people, that was huge for me. And it's a simple thing.
Mm-hmm. That's the unlocks. This is what I'm saying. It's actually not that hard. And it's about mastering that flow and realizing that you can, by changing your perspective, you can change the way everything is operating around you. And we have this perception that being in control is the end goal. And the more you try to control, the more it resists. And that's exactly what you were trying to do when you were reacting. And it was just gets harder and harder. What resists persists.
Yes.
And so moving from that into a space where you detach and you observe and you realize that if you can take the discomfort to sit in those emotions that no one wants, even people, even if you're not an Aries, like you don't like sitting in that. And it's a very natural thing to try to avoid these negative feelings. But once you sit in it and you watch everything dissolve and suddenly feel a lot more at peace because those feelings stop controlling you.
Yes. And they start moving through you. Yes. One of the things that I learned around that time as well was when I started experiencing high levels of anxiety for the first time in my life. And I, through a lot of the things that I was reading, I learned that I was first trying to control it, like, oh my God, I'm anxious. I got to do something about this. What I learned was actually it's like a train coming into a station. And it's going to come through. It's going to stay for a little bit, drop some passengers, pick some up. And it's going to keep on moving. And so that was learning to sit with that and then letting it pass through instead of trying to get more anxious about the anxiety, right? Or wanting to solve it with something else, medication or alcohol. I was like, let me just sit. Let me just breathe through it. Maybe some tools, meditation, maybe some breathing exercises, which helped. And over time, I learned that it was like a train coming into the station, and then you let it come through, and then it goes. Instead of trying to go, and you keep it in the station.
100%. I know, it's so counterintuitive
right.
or counterproductive, because it's really about, it's there to teach. It's always there to teach us something. And by numbing it with medication, we're doing what I was talking about earlier, which is just plowing through and thinking we can override the body. And that's the goal, when all of it is here to teach us something. And so being able to sit with it long enough to get the lesson is a practice.
It is a practice. And so you being hit by this bus is more than just a physical trauma, right?
It was a car. The bus swerved. The car ran me over.
Oh, I see. Okay, so the car was trying to get out of the way of the bus. Wow. But it's also this psychological and spiritual rupture that has happened for you. So in the days and the weeks after this happened, and you were talking about your relationship to your body and your sense of meaning, your sense of understanding control, this is like totally a somatic experience that you're going through on different levels. So what did your body teach you that no mentor, no framework ever could?
Everything. My body, all of our bodies have incredible wisdom and know at all times what is right for us that no one else can ever explain to us. And it wasn't a conscious learning or journey initially, but I had to start listening to make sense in a way of what had happened. And really what the body teaches you is that faith in your body, your inner compass, knowing what the next step is and being able to take a step back and relinquish the control so that you can keep walking towards what is meant for you. And I think it's a very difficult lesson to learn without something that forces that need to surrender. And this is why, sometimes I work with people sometimes who are in recovery or recovering, and it's very powerful because the 12-step program helps them get in touch with that. It's people who've already understood or experienced losing everything, losing the sense of control. And then you can start to build from there. But the loss of control as we perceive it is one of the biggest barriers to tuning in and listening. And when we think we're in control of the next steps, you're following someone else's dream. You're trying to, and it's impossible. You can't find yourself using someone else's map. And unfortunately, that's the way most people operate. So I see my body now as the connection to greater intelligence, as the connection to my purpose. And so it teaches me really everything that I trust most deeply in the world right now.
I mean, the fact that you're helping and teaching folks how to connect with that is powerful because, most people would have to break down a lot of the ways that they think about themselves and the world. And most people are very attached to that. So that requires a huge amount of work to go, okay, that paradigm is not working for me anymore. My belief system isn't working for me anymore. Are the people that you work with really attached to their belief systems? Do you work with helping them to kind of understand another belief system or another? When we talk about faith comes up in many forms, but then how do you help someone to connect with faith and break down old paradigms that aren't serving them anymore?
It's very important for me to work with people who are energetically and emotionally ready to do the work. And not everyone is, and that's okay. And so I'm very selective with who I work with. Yeah. You have a lot of people who say they want change. You can feel they're not there yet. And so to be able to make these changes and get to the breakthroughs and the transformation, the first thing I look for is enough discomfort. So people who say, I just cannot do this for the next 20 years. And there's a level of awareness, too, that is needed, which has actually been beautiful to see. I will say, surprisingly, I've seen it a lot in the men who I speak to, a level of vulnerability and ability to speak about their fears and what needs to change that I just never expected. I had a very stereotypical view of masculinity that I practice too. And so once you get people like that who feel like they cannot stay where they are anymore, and I think that's the difference. They can't think it, and I can tell very quickly on that first call, is this a mental thing that like you've decided that this is not what you want to do anymore, or is this a visceral, I can feel that pull, I just don't know what to do with it. And once you have that, it's not an intellectual exercise, and it's not a framework of like, these are the changes in behavior and mindset that you need to get to the next stage. It's really about, okay, well, now I know you feel it. Let's work through how you tap into it, how you feel it, and you start to see the shifts in their entire energetic field when they are tapping into it in a way that they were not aware of. And suddenly they start really feeling and embodying what it feels like to be aligned. And so that's the first thing that's really powerful. And then you get them to practice that. And the more they see that, and that's when everything starts to flow into their lives, and that becomes addictive very quickly. And then the belief system is different for everyone. That the belief system is built on these narratives that you've told yourself throughout your life. Because I spent 20 years in corporate, there are a lot of very similar patterns that happen to people who end up in corporate, right? The need for safety, the need to perform, the need to prove themselves. And so I expect a lot of those to come up, but everyone has their own. And so it's really about listening to what is it that's coming up? What are the fears? And they do look different. For some people, they have this crazy fear of greatness and being seen. But on the other hand, they have this really strong pull towards impact and changing the world, and they're fundamentally opposed, and there's this huge tension. So then you've got to go back to, okay, well, why? Where does this fear come from of being seen? And you have to go back to that 5-6-year-old and be aware of what's happening and start to realize that it no longer serves them. It no longer serves the mission that they're on, and take baby steps. And that's when, as they continue to do this and like push the edges of their comfort zone and feel that intoxicating pull towards what they're supposed to do, that's when they build the faith. And then we do the work together, but it's a very individual thing that is so energetic. But it's beautiful to see. And, like we talked about, it feels like magic because it naturally, without fail, starts to open doors that you didn't even know existed. And these people show up and they're like, oh my God, that like the opportunity that I've been waiting for my whole life has just shown up because they've opened up to it. But you do work sometimes. I've got people who I work with who are not quite there yet. And I probably pushed over the line because I felt like this was me doing them a service. And if they're not able to feel, if they don't have enough of that discomfort, and pull towards something bigger, you can't force them to. No. You can't help someone feel something that they're not feeling. What I can help do is, once they can tap into it and it's happening, then you can start to help them master it and create an empire.
Do they stay, or do you ever get to a point where you go, you need to maybe go and sit with this and maybe circle back when you're at this other stage?
Yeah, so I typically engage people for 3 months, which gives people enough time to be very clear, like both them and me, to be clear about what is the potential here, what are the next steps. And so for clients who are not ready to go fully into the transformation, that's where I will give them advice on what to do next, but this isn't quite it. And for a lot of people, after 3 months, what they want to do for the next 3 to 6 months looks completely different to what they thought they were starting the work for, because they just see their potential in a whole new light. And while some of them come in thinking, oh, I just need to be in the right rooms and I need a few frameworks so that I can get the next promotion, 3 months in, they're like, that doesn't even make sense anymore. I'm not interested in that. I know what I want. I now need to build something way bigger and figure out how my current job fits into it or doesn't. And how do I really spend most of my time doing the thing that I love, that I'm better than anyone else at, and that I could do all day long without stopping to eat or sleep.
Wow. So remind me again of the 4 F's of the freedom flywheel.
Mm-hmm.
So they are?
It's focus, then fears come up, faith, and flow.
Focus, fears, faith, and flow. Okay, that makes complete sense to me. And then at the end of 3 months with all of your clients, is it like, do we do another 3 months or do we give it a break? I mean, because I'm thinking if you don't already have a lot of people lined up for you, which I'm sure you do, someone's like, well, when am I going to get my time in to have some time with Róisín? So, and then I'm feeling like, then what's the next step? Is it the book? Is it the courses, to go to a wider audience? Because it feels really powerful to me, those 4 F's, that could help so many people.
So right now, I love the one-on-one work because it's incredibly deep and transformational. So I'll probably always have an element of that, but you're right. 2026 is definitely the expansion and reach year. So while I have a lot of clients signing up in January, because that's the time that people want to do this and invest in themselves, I'm also going to be launching a membership tier. So that is less selective. So I'm very selective about the people who I'm working with one-on-one, who needs to be exactly in the right place to get to those breakthroughs, because my plan is always to significantly shift someone's trajectory within the first 3 months. The membership is going to be a more self-directed plan with ongoing tools and monthly group coaching. And so that's for everyone to start to understand and do it a little bit themselves, get into daily practices, and then they can upgrade to one-on-one if that makes sense. I'm also very excited about launching immersive experiences, which, it's the ROI on immersive experiences is way better for the client than it is for the person hosting them. But for me, it's the way that you can have the most impact and transformation. And it's the ability to go deep with people over 3 to 5 days, and really get them to feel it. And over that period of time, once you have felt the shift and you have reconnected with yourself, that's the type of thing that is irreversible. Like, you don't go back. And so I'm really excited to be able to bring that to as many people as possible. I'll probably do 1 to 2 a year. And the first one will be in New York for the proof of concept and just bringing people in. It's just easy because a lot of the people who know me are in New York. So we'll start there and then we'll go a little bit more exotic after that.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah.
Maybe in the south of France.
Maybe. That's a great idea. I love the south of France. Yeah, my uncle owns a castle in the south of Ireland as well. So I've considered that as one of the options.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you're going to do an immersive experience. I feel like when people do things in person, there's and do it in community, is there something really powerful that can happen in those spaces?
Yes, and 100%. I am such a huge fan and believer in communal healing and the power of doing it as a group, because we are all so connected, and you realize that when you do these experiences. And you touched on community, and it's another thing that is very important to me. I've learned it personally, but it's a big thing that I push clients on, is also who you surround yourself with in any type of transformation that you're going through. And the people who knew you as the old you, 90% of them are not able to support who you're becoming. And it's so, you talked about being a founder and how it can be and feel lonely. Yeah. Finding the people who not only can see and hold your vision, but inspire you and make it feel like it's not as big as it could be, and just open the doors to new partnerships and new possibilities. And probably most importantly, people who can match your energy, the energy of where you're going. Exactly. And it is protecting your energy and staying away from people who drain it, and just having check-ins with people who are just on the same wavelength. And what happened in my experience was that the right people all showed up, and you being one of them,
being
for
one
sure.
Of them for me.
It's incredible. And it's all ends up being people who are on the same mission. We just have different audiences, different stories, different ways in, but we're all trying to create the same change and help people in a very similar way. And as you come together as a group and you talk about it, the level of excitement and motivation and inspiration and just possibilities that come from that is just endless. And that's what it's about. And it's just it's underrated. People don't talk about it enough, but it's probably the single most important thing that you need to do if you're going to change your trajectory.
100%. I am so, it's funny because I always considered myself an introvert. And while I could, come out singing and dancing and being out in front of and talking to people and all of those things, I felt people drained me. Mm. And the interesting thing that I've found is that more recently, in the last year, I have noticed that I'm actually getting energy from people for the first time in my life.
Suddenly around the right people.
I'm around the right people. I don't feel drained anymore. And the few times where I have felt drained, I had to look at who was I around? Mm-hmm. Who was in my space, in my orbit? And it's usually then I go, oh yes, okay, I clocked that. I clocked that person, and I spent a little time with that, or they were imposing themselves in my space. And then there's a lot of inner work to have to navigate that. And so, but I find that so rarely now, that because I'm in these spaces of people who are doing the work on themselves, right? People who are aligned with their spirituality, with whatever faith they're doing, but also people who I'm learning from, right? And I'm not saying that to learn from someone, they have to have a PhD in something. These are people that are just going through life, that have had life experiences that I glean information from, that I learn from, that I'm inspired by, and I go, I can add that to my toolkit, because that was powerful what you did right there. And then I'm finding that I'm just getting like this energy and this flow from that. And that plus all the gratitude for being able to not only flow in these spaces better, but when the difficult times come, to go and approach it with a level of awareness of what's going on without letting it just kind of suck you down. So I see all of this amazing flow happening, and so I don't feel like an introvert anymore, which is amazing. So now you're going to be doing these immersive programs. You're going to be helping people to really stay spiritually awake. I'm interested in this shift that I'm perceiving even within the corporate world of being more connected to self. Tell me a little bit about that. People are much more open to that than just having your traditional executive coach. Right? People are starting to go, wait a minute, I need to kind of like work with someone that understands the whole spectrum of things that I might be going through, right?
Yeah, I do think there's a shift that's happening. And sometimes I wonder whether it's because I have now entered into this space that I'm seeing it more, or if it's happening at a broader level. I do believe that AI taking over is going to force us all to become more human. And as a result, you are going to have to dive into what does it mean to be more creative and intuitive and connected, and, relationships. All of those things are going to become more important. And I think it's going to accelerate the journey for a lot of people. And it's going to be very painful for people who are not ready to get on that accelerated journey. For people in the corporate world, I do think these conversations are definitely more accepted, even if we think about when Tony Robbins started, right? No one was talking about a coach outside of a basketball team. And so he definitely paved the way, and he did it in a way that I think the world was ready for, being like just the hyper masculine, hyper successful, right? People suddenly were open to a softer approach because of the wrapping that he was able to communicate it in. And so it does make it easier to have those conversations. And so what that does is it opens the door for, the people who are ready. Now, a lot of people are still going to go through life fighting and achieving and proving. But I think it's easier to support more people through this transition because the information is out there. People are able to experience it. They're able to see more people who are walking the path, and they're people who they can relate to and they admire, and they're not scared of. Like, it's not just the woo-woo spiritual, right. And I know you mentioned spiritual, but that can be a barrier for a lot of people because it's so much more than spiritual. Of course it's spiritual and it's being connected. But anyone in the corporate world will have gone through a leadership training. And there's no leadership training that doesn't speak to tapping into who you are and what you're good at and how you can have the biggest impact on the world. And I think people like Steve Jobs are amazing for this too, because he knew what he believed in, and he didn't conform to the way the corporate world typically operated, and he leaned all the way in. And so you've got these role models out there who regular people in corporate who are there because they want to perform and they want to be successful can look to and say, actually, I want that. Like, what are the steps that were taken there? And it opens the door to it. But as I was talking about earlier, no one else has the map for you. And we really need to help people find themselves and follow their own guidance. And God, there's part of the issue is there are so many coaches out there. Everyone became a coach during the pandemic, right? So I have looked for a number of different ways to call myself that wasn't coach, because the quality of the coaches out there is not always there, and it's a risk, right? Because it's the same with therapists. You have so many bad ones, and there's so many people who are not healed, trying to heal others, and it's dangerous.
Completely.
But if we can raise the game, I think it's a really great time to help the people who are ready. And so that's really where I want to operate. Is you can't help everyone. And yes, there will be a book. And yes, we'll go to as many people who are ready to receive the message. But where I can have the biggest impact, it's going to be these concentric circles and like the ripple of the people who are ready. I want to transform on a deep, deep level so that they can go out and do what they do and speak to an audience that is their own. And I think that's where you get to the really huge impact.
How does Róisín take care of herself? Because when you are taking care of, it's one of the questions I used to ask the therapists in our network. Like, how are you taking care of yourself? Because it's a lot to carry the weight and the space of other people on their journeys.
It's interesting because back in the day, I really wanted to go into psychology. I didn't go into psychology because it wasn't socially acceptable for my father. And then I post-rationalized that by saying I probably wouldn't have been a good therapist because I was unable to process people's issues and not make them my own. And for many years, people would come to me, they would share their issues, I would help them, I'd spend 3 days with them, they would go off and be so happy, and I'd get phone calls from people saying, what did you do to them? This is incredible, I've never seen them so good. Meanwhile, I can't get off my couch because I was so emotionally drained. So I went into corporate and realized what my flow is. And what I'm able to see now is I know what fills me with energy, and the things that fill me with energy are the things that are aligned and the things that I need to do more of. And my line of work gives me a level of fulfillment and energy and pleasure and joy that I can't even express in words. And there is nothing about any of the interactions I have with my clients one-on-one that drains me. People who drain me, I've stopped forcing myself to spend time with them because they need it. And the world has kind of readjusted around me in a way where I almost operate in this beautiful bubble that I've created. So I take a huge amount of care of Róisín through being very selective about who I let in and what I let into my energetic field, and every day doing the thing that I love to do. And I don't watch the news. I don't spend time with people who drain my energy. I was out, went to the hairdressers, and I'm listening to him speak about all these things, and he's planning for the future and he's complaining about the past. And it's really interesting. I'm like, wow, this is me outside of my bubble. And I can see how life is so difficult for so many people. I'm not going to engage in this because you don't want me debating. It's not a debate that I want to get into, but I can see how life is difficult for them because they keep getting sucked into what drains their energy and all these scenarios of worst case scenario and what this person said and what that person said and what the government is doing. Without engaging in any of that, I allow myself to live in a vibration that just matches me. And then I do meditations and breath work. I used to be very regimented about it, and I do it every day because the way I show up energetically is so important with customers and clients. Initially, I needed that breath work all the time. So before I got on a call, I would do breath work and I would feel connected. Now, because everything that I do most days is all this self-work and builds my energy, I don't need it in the same way, but I know there are days where I'm like, oof, I need to reconnect or whatever is happening. But I will always sit down with a journal when that happens. When something is not quite aligned or feels weird, I will sit down and I will write until I get to the root of, oh, I think this is what's going on. And then I've got the tools to recenter myself. But when you're living an aligned life, it's amazing how things don't drain you, as opposed to the way I used to live, where everything drained me and it was just about pushing through and feeling proud.
And you're super fit. You still...
Oh, I do that.
Yes.
Actually, it's great. It's a great point. You'll see that I go to SoulCycle a lot, and I don't do that for being fit. I do that because it is such a source of inspiration for me, because what it allows is you shut off the mind and you just enjoy it. And I love the instructors and it's just a party on the bike. But the amount of times that I walk out of there with insane clarity and, oh my God, this thing that 3 days ago I was wondering about just makes perfect sense because it hits when you stop thinking about it. And so to me, that's really powerful. And that's why I do it mostly.
I'm thinking about starting back to cycling. I just got my knee together. I've had knee issues.
Impact, yeah.
And so I got a shot of cortisone the other day, and it's great. My knee felt like, oh my God, there's no pain there anymore. So I'm thinking now, inspired by you and your SoulCycle journey and experiences, that I may actually pick that up again. And because I did like cycling a lot, so that's...
Through my recovery, it was so helpful. One, because it was very low impact. So I could go and sit in the back of the room and just move my hips. It didn't look good, but it really helped getting me moving again.
Yeah.
And then there was the mental and spiritual side of it, where it just got me back into the right energy. The energy, we talk about how everything is energy and how important energy is. The energy in those rooms of writing as one, the inspiration, the way we just make each other better is incredibly powerful. And so as we speak about getting into staying in rooms and in situations that lift you up, that's definitely what it does. So let's ride.
That's right. Oh my God, we should do that together.
We should totally ride. We'll come down to Brooklyn.
So one of the things that I've been asking people that have come onto the podcast as a sort of closing question is, if you could leave people with one shift, one thing that they can do today to become more present and more resourced or more themselves, what would it be?
Do more of what makes you feel alive and energized. Those are the clues and the breadcrumbs to your purpose. Those are the moments where you're feeling the most aligned. And the more you do it, the more you'll want to do it, and the more clarity you will get.
Thank you for coming on the podcast. I love you so much.
I love you too.
And then I'm sure we will do this again in the future. And I wish you all the best with your new journey.
Thanks, my love.
Thanks for listening to The Healing Hack. If this conversation resonated, subscribe, leave a review, and share it. You can find me at The Healing Hack on Instagram. And for more on cultivating personal ritual in your life, and to discover the products we are creating to support that, follow Sordoe at Sordoe Official on Instagram and at Sordoe Rituals on TikTok. Until next time.